What is creativity? It is not nice, warm. It's messy. It's full of self-doubt, by the way. But at the end, it's vital. It's the way we heal each other. It's like a dialogue, and then the healing happens. Creativity is nothing but an expression. It's like nature manifests in all of us. And in creativity, there is no path till you walk on it. Hello, everyone. This is Anshul, your host, and I welcome you all to another episode of Conversationalist, the podcast. Today we have with us Adrian. He is a landscape photographer, a beautiful one, by the way, a YouTuber, a bookmaker, and a lot more. Let's hear more from him. Adrian, it's lovely to have you on the show.
Hi, Henschel. Nice to be here.
Great, great. So, Adrian, where are you right now in US?
I'm in Indiana, northern Indiana, in a small town in the Midwest. And yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So, Adrian, we have had a bit of a exchange of thoughts and exchange of conversations earlier, and the kind of a topic which we have today is very inquisitive to my heart as well. It's about, finding your own self and creativity. So I think, while we go there, but knowing you are a creative individual and you have been doing a lot of things, photography, YouTube,
Mhm.
bookmaking, why don't you give us a little bit of an understanding about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Adrian. I'm a full-time photographer uh, that is trying to make a living with photography. And I do a lot of things that are not just shooting photos or taking photos, but I'm a YouTuber too. I'm a blogger. I have a blog where I write. So everything it's around photography because it's the art form that I chose for myself. It's my hobby and my passion. So before this, I used to be a computer engineer. That was my 9 to 5 job, and I guess I didn't realize or I didn't see it that way at that time. But it was also a creative endeavor in a sense because I was creating something, and now I'm doing something that is very similar to that, but in a photography with photography. And yeah, I love it. I love what I do, and I hope I can do this for the rest of my life and never retire or anything, because I love creating stuff and share it with others, and hopefully inspiring others to do the same. Because I think that human beings are made to create stuff and share stuff, be it like photos, stories, whatever it is, and share it with other people and other humans. And I think that is a good way, or it could make us happier. And yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I'm trying to do, to create for myself and for others to inspire them to do the same.
Okay, so Adrian, you were a computer engineer, and I'm quite inquisitive because I hire computer engineers here as well in India. How
Mhm.
did that tectonic shift happen from computer engineering to photography?
Yeah, so yeah, I was a computer engineer, and that was my job for since I can remember as a little kid that I was starting playing with computers and programming them and creating stuff with them. I thought it was fun, and then for me, it was a natural path to take later going to college and my first job and second job, and it was just all natural to me. It was like I was destined to be that, and for a long time, I enjoyed that and I loved that. As I said before, I see that now as a creative endeavor, as a creative path. I didn't see it that way necessarily back then. It was more like mechanical stuff, but I see that I was creating something in the form of software at that time. So now I can see maybe that photography was a natural step to take too, because it's about creating a completely different thing, but it's still creating something. And this happened when I moved here to the US. I'm originally from Spain, so I moved here. I moved to Oregon, and for those who don't know, Oregon is a beautiful place. Landscapes there are pretty spectacular. Nothing like I had back in Spain, which is still a pretty place, but it's nothing spectacular in Oregon. There are like big volcanoes and big trees. Everything is bigger and more stunning and spectacular. So I got into hiking and into spending more time in nature. I fell in love with being outdoors, something that I didn't necessarily do as much before that. And when I started seeing those landscapes, I wanted to share them with my friends and family back in Spain. So I started taking photos first with my phone. Then I was like, they could be a little bit better. Let's buy a bigger camera, a better camera. And that's how I got into photography. And over time, that little hobby that I was doing during the weekends, and then later, just after work, it started growing and growing and growing. I became bigger than my actual job. So I decided to quit my job and just become a full-time photographer and give this a chance to see where I can go with photography.
That's very interesting to know, Adrian. And I know that you have published a book as well. Would you want to give us a little brief about that as well?
Yeah, so this book is called Becoming an American, and it's the story of more or less what I just told you about how I moved to the US and how everything was new. And yeah, we moved to Oregon, that is on the West Coast. So it's a 9-hour difference between there and Spain. So not only I left everyone I knew behind for after 30 years and everything I knew. I mean, the culture here is not that different from Spain, but I mean, it's still a change. And being away from everyone, everyone I was meeting in Portland was brand new to me. And I was brand new to them too. So, and I saw that as an opportunity to, recreate myself from scratch and maybe be a little bit different and maybe try to do things that I've always wanted to do, but never accomplished before, like for example being out more in nature, and Oregon was like the perfect place to do so. And being so many time zones away from everyone I knew too, that meant that I only had a window to talk to them and be in touch with them for half of the day. The other half of the day I had to expose myself to the new stuff and be on my own. And yeah, that led me to rediscover myself in a sense, and to get out more in nature and to get into photography. And that's the story that I tell in my book. It's mostly a photography book. It's mostly photos and images, but it has some text here and there to provide this context. And my main body of work when it comes to photography, they are like fine art, square, black and white images. But the images in this book are a little bit different. They are more like snapshots, even though that word has like a bad rap lately because no one wants to take snapshots. They want to make images, but I mean, the snapshots are fine. And in this case, they are like behind the scenes images of my journey coming here to the US, and this change from a computer engineer to a full-time photographer while I was discovering all this spectacular and beautiful nature. And that's the story that I wanted to tell with that book. And I tell it with those snapshots that I was taking while I was exploring and discovering these new places.
How should one nurture creativity in themselves?
Yes.
And how can one make that process, more as a journey?
Yes. So creativity for me, so someone doesn't create because they are creative. For me, they are creative because they create. For me, action comes first. So creativity is not something that you have, it's not something that you are born with. I mean, some people, yes, they are extremely talented, but you probably can count those people with your hand, it's very rare. Most of us, you need to get out there and take photos to be creative and to gain that creativity. I believe that action comes first, and then you get motivated and you get creative through your actions. So I think that the best way to nurture that and to be more motivated is to just get a camera. I mean, I have several cameras, but this one is a really tiny compact camera, and this is my favorite. It's the one that I enjoy shooting the most because I can bring it with me everywhere. And you can ask my friends and family, I'm always taking pictures of the food that I'm eating, the drinks that I'm drinking, of them, the people I hang out with. It's just documenting my life. It doesn't necessarily has to be, amazing photos for a magazine or something. It's just the little act of taking one photo, even if it's just your coffee, it's something
Mm.
creative that you are doing. It's something, I think that the small changes and the small things like that are the ones that bring the most reward and that bring the most, I know, they change you the most. And I think that the best way to be creative and to stay creative is to just do it. To just need to get out there and start taking photos. And the hard part is getting started. That's
Yeah.
always the case, almost in anything in life. But once you get started and the ball starts to roll, it's much easier to stay there. Of course, you have to be passionate about what you do. If you're not passionate about photography, you might take photos for one day, but then the next day you're going to take half of the photos, and 1 week later you're not taking any photos because maybe it's not your passion. Maybe you need to follow something else. That's totally fine. But if you do like photography, if you are passionate about photography, the best way to be creative and stay that way is to just take photos, a lot of it, a lot of them.
Mm. I think I completely agree with your point, which you said that till the time you don't act, you will not get it. So you need to
Hmm.
keep acting, keep shooting, and then
Yes.
it will automatically come up. So
Yeah,
so makes
I think it
sense.
was, there is a good quote from Picasso, I think, that he said that inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. Like, it's not that
Mm.
it doesn't happen the other way. It doesn't happen that you are laying on the couch, sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden the inspiration comes to you from nowhere. Like, I'm inspired and now I'm gonna get up and go out, take photos. It's not that way. You get out first, and then once you are out there, inspiration might come or might not. It doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes we feel inspired and we start taking more photos because we are already there doing it.
Yeah, so that's the process. You get out first. So just get out.
Yeah, yes. Sometimes you have to force yourself a little bit to get out there, but yeah, it's always worth it. If you like photography, if you're passionate about it, or if you like writing, I mean, you
Mm.
sometimes you have to force yourself to sit down and start writing. But maybe 15 minutes later, 30 minutes later, you are just, in the flow and in the moment, and you just can't stop writing. And I think that those first 5 minutes are the hard ones, but then once you get engaged and it starts working, that's much easier. But yeah, we need to force ourselves a little bit at the beginning.
Bang on. Bang on, Adrian. Bang on. I think couldn't agree more on this. Perfect. With that perfect as a word, I think I'll move to the next point. Perfectionism. How do you
Yes.
see that impacting your creative self? Because I have seen, as a photographer myself, that it really hits me. What's
Mhm.
your thought?
Yeah, that is a good question because that has affected me too in the past in many ways, and I think it still does. And it's hard because you want things to be the way you envision them at first. Like if I go out, many times when I go out on a photography trip or something, I don't know what I'm going to be creating, but sometimes I do know what I want to create beforehand, and I get out there looking for that. And if I don't get exactly that, I'm not going to be happy, or maybe I'm not even going to go out. If for example, I like to take photos in foggy conditions, and maybe
Mm,
sometimes I will not get out there if it's not during sunrise, sunset, or during those foggy conditions where I'm gonna get, those perfect images that I was looking for. But over time, I realized that if you wait for that, if you wait for perfection, for those perfect conditions, or for whatever it is, it might be that you're working on a book and you keep thinking, or you keep telling yourself, I think I need a couple more images. I think I need to add this. I need to change this. I'm gonna have to ask someone else to take another look. And it's just because it's not perfect. I think that to a point that is useful because we don't want to rush things and we want to make the best that we can. But it gets to a point where we are not progressing anymore. We're just overthinking things. And it's hard to know maybe when to stop, but I think we need to, for example, in this case with my book, I have been working on that book for years. It's not that I'm not gonna say that this book, that I've been working on that book for 5 years every day, but I started working this book like 5 years ago, compiled a few images and left them behind because it didn't feel right. Then came back to the book 1 year later, mixed them again, added a few more, and it's just, it doesn't feel right or whatever. And now 5 years later, after 5 years of doing that, I finally decided to, okay, it's gonna feel right. This time it's gonna feel right. I'm gonna release it, and that's how it worked. It worked out because I decided to go for it and make it. Is it perfect? No, it's not. And
Mm.
there are many things that I would have loved to add. There are many images that are lacking that I would have loved to have there, but it's done, and I can always, make another book. And it's the same with the images. It might not be the perfect image, but it's better if we share it, with someone else, or just say that it's done, and we can move on to something else. Because sometimes when we get stuck with something, we don't have a space for something new, and that might be bad too. So leaving behind perfection not only is good for finishing projects like, for example, a book, but it's also good because we need to leave a space for new things that are to come. I understand sometimes it's hard to know when things are done, but yeah.
It's an evolution process, Adrian, isn't it?
Yeah,
You can never be perfect, right? So what we need to do is keep evolving ourselves and see
Mhm.
that, okay, we are better than ourselves, what we were yesterday, but are we perfect? We will never be perfect.
Yeah,
But we are evolving as species, as photographers, as creative
yeah.
self. So I think
That's a very
that's
good
an
point. Yeah. I like to think of
that's an important.
photography for me as a journey. There is
Yeah.
I'm not expecting to reach a point where I'm gonna say I've arrived. I've made it as a photographer. Now I can just retire or something. It's what you say.
Mm.
It's evolving over time, and I really can't wait to see what myself is gonna be making in 5 years. Because
Adrian, so I think we have addressed a very interesting aspect of perfectionism, and I feel with perfectionism there is one more thing which has kept a lot of creative people onto the edge, and that's fear of failure.
Mhm.
While I believe both are connected, perfectionism and
Yeah.
fear of failure. But what do you feel? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this reminds me of that time I went to a place that is called the Antelope Canyon, Arizona. It's like a very popular slot canyon. It's beautiful when you go there at noon and the sun is high in the sky. It reflects all the colors in the walls, and it's beautiful. But the thing is, it's very popular. So the only way for you to go there and take photos without, capturing 20 to 30 people in the frame is to go with a guide that will
Mm,
give you priority over everyone else, so they can stop everyone from walking through the canyon. And they'll give you tips too, and they'll point you to the best shots and the most popular shots. And this guide, I was talking to him afterwards, and I was asking him, hey, you've been coming here to this canyon for years, so I'm pretty sure that you've had the chance to see this canyon in beautiful light or covered in snow, even flooded, whatever, in many different conditions. So I'm pretty sure that you have amazing photos. Do you have like a website where I can look at your photos or something? And he was like, no, I do take photos very often, but they are in the hard drive of my computer. I don't share them. And I was like, why not? He's like, because to this tour with many famous and well-known photographers come with me, and I show them the places and I see them working, and I just feel like I cannot compete with them. I cannot make better photos than them. So he was afraid of showing his work because he was fearing that he would be compared to those other photographers, even though he probably has better images just because of the fact that he has access to that place every day, while those
yeah.
very well-known photographers have access to that place maybe 1 or 2 days a year or every
Mm,
10 years. So he was afraid of that. And yeah, that's something that is very natural and very common to be compared to someone else and to lose in that way. But I think that we shouldn't see at least photography as when we look at photography as something creative, as something as an art form. I don't think there are winners and losers. I don't think we should look
mm,
at it that way. It's just about expressing yourself, and there is nothing to lose. There is no failure in there because you are expressing yourself in this case with photography. But I mean, there is no, if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense to be afraid of failing because you can't fail. You're just creating what you feel. And that's the only way. It's like looking at your work from your subjective eye. You cannot look at your work from an objective eye, because what does that even mean? Who is anyone to tell you that your image is good or bad? It's hard. Sometimes we recognize good art just because someone else told us that it was good art. Many of the photos and paintings that we see in museums, if there were no experts telling you that the Gioconda, is a great painting, maybe no one would be taking or paying attention to that painting. Maybe Leonardo would feel like he failed. Like Picasso created a lot of pieces during his life, and most of them are in warehouses and in basements. They are not exposed to anyone. They are probably better than the ones that they are in the museums today. So I think that we should take photography and art as something that is good for us and is to share and inspire others, not as something that to be compared to others or to, I don't know. It's fine to have high expectations for your own work, but I think it's more important at the end of the day to create and share your work.
I think you made a very, I would say, deep point over here, Adrian, and I think I can also reflect it to myself, because I go through something like this a lot, which is fear of failure, comparing my work to somebody else's work. And then what happens is your passion starts to either dissolve, or you stop, doing it, or you stop taking more pictures because you feel maybe you are not worth it. Maybe somebody else, who's getting those 300, 500,000 likes on Instagram is better, much better than you, and you can't make it. And then you say, then why should I even do it? And I personally feel, and I think this thought I'm getting because I'm hearing you right now, and this thought is for myself as well, is creativity is not the journey outwards. It's not to do with somebody else who's clicking and shooting and publishing. It's, I think, the journey inside. It's the journey inwards.
Yes.
And as you keep doing it, now that could be photography, by the way, right? We started this conversation. It could be with anything, writing, poetry, anything. And then you start finding yourself. And as soon as you start finding yourself, you start to gain that confidence. And then, the stigma of perfectionism, the fear of failure, the taboo of comparisons starts to fade away. But again, like we were saying, it's a journey, it's an evolution.
Yes, I totally agree 100% with that, for sure.
Sounds good. So I think we have made a very interesting aspect over here, and I think this conversation was a thought-provoking conversation, Adrian, I would say. And you have been an amazing guest. You have been patient during all technical glitches as well. And what I feel is, and this, and what I feel is, Adrian, I think, and I can say at least to myself, the conversation we had, the thoughts we, I think, have shared would shackle some bit out there. So thank you so much. Yeah,
sure.
Thank you so much for joining in, and thank you so much for taking out time on your Sunday morning. And we should connect soon later, I should say.
Anytime, and thank you so much for having me again.